Hello and welcome to another episode of Threat Update. Joining me again today is Ryan O'Boyle. Ryan, how are you?
Hey, Kilian. I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good, thank you. And I'm Kilian Englert, your host. And today we're going to look back at some of the most interesting investigations that Ryan and his team have done in 2020. I know we've talked about a lot of really cool ones. We've had a lot of unique stories that he's told us. So Ryan, I want to open this up. Let's look back on the whole year. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the coolest things that you've run into in 2020 so far?
Yeah, definitely. You know, we've talked a lot over the past couple of months around specific threat actors and techniques and a lot of different things that we're seeing. I think some of the most memorable investigations, to me at least, are, sometimes almost the simpler ones, or, the simpler questions that come about. So one of the first ones that I could think of is we were working with an organization about a couple months ago at this point, and they had a problem come up and they approached us with it. And it's actually something that probably happens to a lot of organizations. So somebody had accidentally moved a spreadsheet containing all of their 2019 executive payroll information into a public share, which is bad. Obviously, that contains a lot of personal information.
Very bad, yeah.
And we didn't know about it until it was there for about a month. And the reason we found out about it was because people were talking about it, which is also bad. Yeah. So they came to us with that problem and said, what can we do? So we kind of took a step back and went back to the basics a little bit for this investigation and said, can you give us the file name? And then we used that to run a search off of historic event collection. And we had found when that file was moved to that new location, who had done it. Obviously, in this case, it was an accident, but could sometimes be malicious. We knew which device they were on when they did it. We knew exactly where they put it. We knew exactly which date and time they did it. And then even better, we ran, a forward-looking search to see all the different users who had actually accessed that file over the next month. And it was actually 96 different users that had seen that file. So we quickly pulled a pivot table on that, exported that to CSV, and provided it to their HR resources so that they could remediate that effectively. The best part with that was, once we deleted the file, because obviously we knew where it was located now, we could validate that it was actually gone with the audit trail again.
That's awesome. So it sounds like that investigation, I know we talk a lot about alerting and things like that, but that covered a lot of the platform, from the standard auditing on the file servers to Active Directory, to data classification potentially, and of course the permissions mapping. So that really covered a lot of the bases for a comprehensive investigation. Pretty cool stuff. So any others you can think of? So that was a really interesting one, covered a lot of bases here. Anything else that comes to mind?
Actually, one more, and this has come up a couple of times actually over the course of this year, and it's been a pretty strong tactic that we've come up with on our side. So, sometimes people have their identity stolen. It happens all the time. We see commercials for it on TV even. And usually one of the questions that comes out of that is, did it come from my company? Right. And sometimes this gets identified, if that employee, somebody tries to file for unemployment under their identity, and then that gets back to the company. So, oftentimes the first question is, did it come from us? And that's, without Varonis, if you think about it, a very challenging question to answer. So what we've done, and it's been quite successful so far, is we'll generally come in, we'll create custom data classification scans based off of the key pieces of information that we know. So things like social security number, name, address, anything that's involved with that, fraudulent unemployment record. And then we'll create those scans, scan everything that we have visibility on, see if we can identify, first of all, are there any files out there that actually contain any combinations of these personal pieces of information. And then if so, then we start to do a look back. We'll do a look back both on audit trail as well as permissions. So we'll generally do something like a 2-year look back in quarterly increments to see who's had access to that data over the course of the past 2 years. And then we'll also do the search around who has actually accessed that data. So we might do a 1 to 2 year look back to see every user who's actually touched one of those files. And the good news is, more often than not, we find that nobody actually has touched that data, and it's usually coming from another location. But it's a great way for an organization to validate, whether or not that data is actually out there, and if so, has anybody touched it that shouldn't have been? And this has come up numerous times. And again, this kind of goes back to a lot of our core use cases. Audit trail, understanding permissions, data classification, and using some of these custom scans to our advantage when it comes to an investigation.
It sounds like this is another situation too, where if the organization is in like a least privilege model, hopefully that could limit down the amount of research you'd have to do, especially if it's only a handful of people. But then again, you could look back at the historic access or who had access to those locations as well too.
Exactly.
Pretty good stuff, yeah. So thank you, Ryan. I think this is a great insight, and thank you for sharing all of your insights with us over 2020. Here's looking forward to 2021. May it be a more interesting year, but maybe less ransomware.
In the right ways.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for watching. We definitely appreciate you checking us out on YouTube. If you find this content interesting, we're going to continue this into 2021 and into the future. So please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you enjoy this, please maybe throw us a comment or a like. We really appreciate it. Well, thank you, and talk to you soon. Take care.